From the Studio 13 Studios in Splendora, Texas, Hank's Think Tank is brought to you by Splendora Cafe and Barbecue.
Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cams rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to Hank's Think Tank. Today I have Jim Spigener. He is the president of the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District. So we're going to talk about this ongoing thing with the SJRA and Quadvest and the Groundwater District and everybody else. It's a little complicated, but we're going to muddle through and see if we can help you guys understand it. And I just wanted to remind everybody that we are having a public forum on September the 20th in the community room at the Randall Reed Center there in New Caney. So we're looking forward to doing that. It'll be at 6:30 p.m. It's a free event. Show up, learn a little bit about what's going on and what you can possibly do to save yourself some big money in the long run. Jim, good morning. How you doing today?
Good morning, Hank. I'm great. Appreciate it.
Good to have you with us. Now, to start out with, what I'd really like to do is find out what the role of the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District is. What's the role here?
Okay, we're a district that manages groundwater in all of Montgomery County. So we only manage, for the most part, what we call non-exempt water users. Meaning, if you're a homeowner and you have 2 acres and you have your own well, we'd like to know about it, and we'll register it so that we don't let somebody come in and sink a big well right next to you so it dries your well up. But we mostly deal with the commercial water users, and our role really is to do a couple of things. One, to protect personal property rights. So the water below you is owned by you. So we want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity at a fair share. So what we mean by that is we can't pick winners and losers. Now, we might be able to, we can regulate. So, if 2 companies come in and they each have a 2-acre lot and they both want to sink a 1,000,000-gallon-a-minute well on that 2-acre lot, we can't allow that.
Right.
So our role really is to, one, set desired future conditions for what our underground water supplies look like over the next 70 or 80 years. So we want to assure that we have those water supplies, and we want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity at a fair share of the water that's theirs below them.
Okay. So in a way, it's a regulatory agency.
It is.
And an oversight agency as well.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's great.
And let me just say one more thing. This was an appointed board up until 2018, and in 2018, because of the problems that you guys are kind of already aware of with the Sanchina River Authority and the water plants and the GRPs and all of that, the legislators saw fit to make us accountable to the citizens of Montgomery County. And in 2018, we got elected. A brand new board did.
Okay.
We ran the table. So not one incumbent was held over. And,
great.
There was a reason for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how long are your terms?
Some are 2 years and some are 4 years. So we came into this thing, not wanting to overturn the whole board every 4 years. So when we came into this, we got some members that serve 2-year terms and some members that serve 4-year terms. So we continue to have some experience left on the board. So this election, I think 4 members are up for re-election and 3 of us are not.
Okay.
And 1 member is moving from one district to another, so we have to hold a special election for that one. So there'll actually be 5 elected positions this time.
So that would be a majority, I assume.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. 9 board members or 8?
7.
7? Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so prior to this being an elected board, when it was an appointed board, most of the board members were people that were put in from the SJRA, right?
Well, no. The SJRA got appointed to the board.
Okay.
They were an appointee, as was the Woodlands Joint Powers or the Woodlands Water Agency guy. Now, there really isn't much difference between the SJRA and the Woodlands Water Agency, because the Woodlands Water Agency really is distributing water for SJRA, because SJRA owns all the wells in the woodlands.
Okay.
So you had 2 members on that board who were the directors of their agencies. In other words, these were pretty high-powered and influential guys.
Mm-hmm.
The rest came from, like, some of the MUDs on the east side of the county and some of the MUDs on the west side of the county were allowed to appoint somebody. Farm Bureau, I think, appointed one. They came from a variety of areas. But yes, they were all appointed. And the excuse that they used at the time was we need to have a exemption from conflict of interest because we're going to have all these people from these different places having to collaborate. So we got groundwater people and surface water people that are having to collaborate. So we need an exemption from conflict of interest.
Okay.
That got abused pretty well. And eventually that piece of the legislation got taken out before we actually became a new board, before the elected board. That got pulled.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So the SJRA, so their overall plan is to build an infrastructure, even as far in as Splendora, for surface water from Lake Conroe, instead of us using groundwater here.
Yeah. So if you really want to understand, I believe, where the SJRA is going, go down and look at Harris County and how they've done their surface water conversion, the way they did it, the tools they used, the steamrolling of people that they did and what they did. If you look at that, they just brought that up here and are applying it to Montgomery County. So yes, they would like to put, I would say, some large percentage of Montgomery County on surface water, and it's going to take a hell of a lot of infrastructure to do it because Montgomery County is less densely populated than Harris County. Because
For now,
but that's changing rapidly.
Yeah, really quick.
Yeah.
Okay. And so right now, though, like here in Splendora, about 40% of my water bill goes to the SJRA.
Yes.
And that money doesn't represent any water that we get from the SJRA.
That's right.
So how are they charging us, and what's the deal behind that? Because I'm not real happy about that at all. And keep in mind, our water bills aren't bad here.
No.
I spend $40-50 a month, for my average water bill. But when I look at the fact that 40% of that is going to something that I'm not getting at all, and maybe paying for someone else's infrastructure, I'm not happy. So kind of explain how we ended up here and where we could go from here if it goes bad.
So the SJRA has a big vested interest in Lake Conroe.
Okay.
Now, they've sold about 2/3 of the water to the city of Houston.
And they own all the rights to Lake Conroe, right?
Well, they own the majority of it.
Okay.
So 2/3 of that water is pledged to the city of Houston.
Okay.
The city of Houston pays the SJRA about $2 million a year not to use that water. It's for us. If we need it. They don't use it really. The SJRA still has 1/3 of that water that they can sell, and in fact, they can sell the rest of it as long as they assure the city of Houston that they're going to have their 2/3. So there's a big turnover there could be a big turnover in the water in Lake Conroe and not damage the capacity of the lake overall.
Right. Okay.
So the SJRA saw a real opportunity to get into the retail or wholesale, whatever, water business. And so they, on the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District, they decided, okay, let's figure out how we do this. How do we do that? Because there's no infrastructure here. And they went to the legislator. They got a plan together. They went to the legislature twice and asked for statutory authority to force the conversion from groundwater to surface water.
And statutory authority is the ability to tax.
Okay. Yes. They were turned down both times. The legislature said, this smells. This doesn't look good to us. We're not signing up for this.
Right.
So what they did is they went ahead anyway. And what they did was they got Lone Star. SJRA got Lone Star, convinced the Lone Star board to go to a groundwater reduction program. You heard the term GRP?
GRP.
That stands for Groundwater Reduction Plan Program.
And that's the amount of water that we actually pump out of the ground, not surface water from
Nothing
a lake.
to do with surface water.
But that's water we pump out of the
That's only
aquifers.
groundwater.
Okay.
So they convinced the SJRA convinced, I believe, the Lone Star board, because believe me, the people from the SJRA and the Woodlands Water Agency were highly influential, slick people.
Okay.
And they convinced this board it was the right thing to do. Now, so you ask yourself, why would they even do that? I mean, doesn't that sound kind of nuts that we're going to just arbitrarily? I mean, who benefits from that?
Well, not when you look at the amount of money behind it.
Okay. So what happened was they had to have a reason to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The reason was we're running out of water.
Okay.
They were trying to sell the county, and they did. They scared the county into saying, we're running out of water, folks.
Drying up the aquifer.
We're drying up the aquifer, and we need to do something. We need to be prepared. Well, at some point, you and I both know if the population continues to grow, we're going to need every available supply of water we can find.
Right.
But when is that, and at what cost, and how do we do it is the problem. So what they did is they convinced the county that we're running out of water, and they did a pretty good job of that, I believe.
Okay.
And so when the water companies in the cities signed on to these GRP contracts, when the cost was just minimal. I mean, because they didn't have a big plant yet to pay for. Right. So it came on at like 50 or 75 cents a 1,000 gallon or some number. I don't even remember what the number was now, but it was nothing like it is now. Then over time, they just kept stepping it up. Well, at some point, the water producers, independent water producers in the cities decided, oh my God, we're caught in a stranglehold here. There's nothing we can do about it. It's not a tax. They have the authority to just keep and they were. They
didn't tax us. They just called it pumpage
fee because they couldn't get the statutory authority. So what happened was Lone Star told these water companies in the cities, either sign up for this groundwater reduction program or we're going to fine you $10,000 a day. Now, you'll hear the SJRA...
$10,000 a day?
A day. You'll hear them say, nobody got forced into this. You could have formed your own GRP.
Okay, so if they didn't have statutory authority, how could they fine all these municipalities $10,000?
Lone Star.
Oh, Lone
Star has
okay, so they use Lone Star to get it done.
So I call SJRA, I refer to them, my analogy would be like the mafia.
Okay.
And Lone Star was the hitman.
I got you. That makes sense. Yeah.
So Lone Star comes along and tells these people, sign up or it's $10,000 a day. Now, if you take...
and back then, there's not a municipality around that could afford that.
Well, even worse, let's take one of the independent water producers like C&K or one of these small guys.
Right.
What would $10,000 a day do to them if they lost their case in court? Suppose that Lone Star imposed the fee on them and they said, no, we're not paying it. We'll go to court. And it takes 6 months to get to court and then you lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would break the back of anybody.
Any little companies can't. So
absolutely.
And the amount of money they were being charged at that time was minimal. So they signed up.
Makes sense.
They didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Then at some point they realized this was existential to the companies and backbreaking to the cities.
Right.
So Conroe, Quadvest, bunch of them joined forces and sued.
Okay.
Sued to stop the
rate increases.
Well, to say that the rule of cutting back, not the rate increase, but the rule of cutting back to 70% of 2009 was not fair. I mean, that was not necessary.
Right.
That case went to court. SJRA knew they were going to lose it. And on the courthouse steps, they agreed to go to 100,000 acre feet instead of 64,000 acre feet, which was where they had to go back to.
Okay.
So about that time, the USGS came along and really stuck a stick in the spokes. Okay. The USGS came along.
The Geological Survey.
Geological Survey.
Okay.
they came along and they did a study, and they said the available groundwater in the aquifers in Montgomery County alone held 180 million acre-feet of water.
That is an astronomical amount.
Now think about a 64,000 acre-feet a year cap compared to 180 million acre-feet. And everybody says to me, well, that's not all recoverable. I agree. Let's assume 10% of it's recoverable.
Okay. You'll still never catch up to it.
Still 18 million acre-feet. If you pump 64,000 acre-feet a year and you have no recharge, do you know how long it takes to take the aquifer down 1%?
Forever. I mean, it'd take a while.
So a friend of mine, Kirk Osborne, and I wrote an article. He actually wrote it. It was his brainchild. I helped him with it.
Okay.
And he wrote it in my behalf because I was running for this, for the office, called the Saudi Arabia of Water.
Okay.
And he contrasted with that 180 million acre feet. Well, that took the wind out of SJRA's sails about we're running out of water. They had no ground to stand on at that point.
Yeah, no foundational impact.
So they agreed to do what they call something called Run D. It's just a model that says, look, okay, we'll let you have 100,000 acre feet. And the water companies refused to settle, and it went to court, and they lost. Judge McCorkle deemed the rule illegal from the very start and unenforceable. So that pulled the rules that they used to force people into the contracts out from under them.
And that should have killed the validity of the contract.
It should have killed it, but it should have, but it didn't. It doesn't. By law, if you've already signed a contract, that's still binding. But here's the interesting thing. We still have the old board in place. So they lose the court case. What do you think they did? They appealed it. So they appealed it. Now, Lone Star at that time, Lone Star's a small entity money-wise compared to the SJRA.
Okay.
Lone Star runs on about a $2 million a year budget.
Okay.
Give or take a little bit. And they had already spent $1.8 million. Lone Star had fighting the citizens of Montgomery County, the water companies and the cities over this thing. New board gets elected. We come in. We settle the lawsuit.
Just kill it.
Kill it. So now they're left with no alternative at all because Lone Star is the only one that could enforce that rule. And that's not an SJRA rule. That was a Lone Star rule.
Right.
So now all of a sudden what SJRA was using as their backup is gone. Now all they have are the contracts. So then the cities and the water companies turn their attention to suing for the contracts. Suing to get those invalidated. That's a big thing that's going on right now. Is that lawsuit is still in play.
Right. And so theoretically, if we get the GRP contracts invalidated, then the pumpage fees go away right off the bat.
Exactly. Well, then they're faced with figuring out how they're going to pay for that water plant if the pumpage fee. But one other thing I want to bring up.
But I wonder if the citizens of Montgomery County could go back to the SJRA and say, well, your GRP was deemed unenforceable. That could be retroactive, and now you owe us all the money we spent on pumpage fees for the past 15 years.
They probably could do that. There's probably some legal avenue. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so it's hard for me to know that. Here's what I do know. The city of Conroe and some of the water companies, including Quadvest, are escrowing. They're not escrowing all of it, but they're escrowing. Some of them may be escrowing all of it. But Conroe started escrowing any rate increase. They just put it in, and they're going to give it supposedly back to. Now there's a big fight in Conroe about that. I'm not sure. Some of the council wants to give it back. Others want to use it. But I know that
the citizens' money.
It is. It is the citizens' money. And I know Quadvest intends to return all of that money to its customers. Because what they know is the likelihood of retrieving that money from the SJRA is somewhere between slim and none.
Okay.
Because it would take a big class action lawsuit.
Yeah,
and even
years.
then, can the SJRA even afford to pay it back?
Right.
They're going to be left with a hard enough time paying for the water plant. But here's something else. So then the SJRA claims immunity. They claim that they have immunity from lawsuits over these GRP contracts because they're a government agency.
Okay.
They do not have immunity. Now,
Right.
they have been in the courts for the last 5 years claiming immunity. They've lost 4 or 5 times they've lost. And in fact, if you want an eye-opener, go look at Judge Vanessa Gilmore's ruling on them the last time they went to the Fifth Circuit.
Okay.
She basically told them no on all 7 issues that they were trying to fight. Not only no, but her final parting shot in that lawsuit was, I believe the citizens of Montgomery County would be well served to let this legal system let this thing play itself out. And what that means is she thinks that they don't have a leg to stand on.
They probably don't.
And
this
so
point.
I don't think they do either. And I think they're going to lose the lawsuit. And I think they're in a really bad place.
Yeah, their best bet at this point is to drag it out.
So,
You know?
so now,
Try to deplete everybody's money. you know?
Yes. So there's a couple of more issues that I think are really important for people to understand. The Lone Star Board is under a huge amount of pressure. We're trying our best to protect personal property rights. In other words, we're trying to keep some artificial political force from forcing us to go back to charging, to forcing people to cut back groundwater and force surface water. Now, at the last water forum in the Woodlands, Jace Houston tried to make a mockery of me saying we don't want to force people. We're not going to force people to go to surface water. And he said something like, you and I both know that if nobody's going to you're not going to voluntarily solve this problem. People aren't going to just, which was a complete, I guess, bending of what I meant. What I meant was, I don't think if you wait on volunteerism to do much, you're not going to get a lot done. But there's a different way than forcing it.
Right.
There's called collaboration and working together to do this. There was no working together. None of the stakeholders. Those bonds for that water plant, which resulted in the GRPs, there was not one vote by any citizens of Montgomery County to saddle themselves with that $500 million. And furthermore, that debt is held by the state of Texas.
Right.
We are regulated by the Texas Water Development Board at Lone Star. Do you see a problem with that? Do you see a problem with
Right.
the person who's trying to
if they
force?
hold the bonds, it's crazy.
So how suspect should we be of the treatment that we're going to get from the Texas Water Development Board?
And the thing is, from just my view, and I'm just an average guy,
Yeah.
I see that the problem is that there isn't a problem. So if we're sitting on top of the largest aquifer out here, and there's no way we could deplete it in the next 20 years,
Yeah.
but they're saying that we have to stop pumping groundwater, we have to use surface water, it's BS. And
Well,
there's really not a problem. The problem is you've got a large corporation and a bunch of municipalities and mud districts that are fighting with each other. That's the real problem. And the worst part about it is that the average guy is the one paying the price.
They are. You're hurting all the citizens of Montgomery County. But
Right.
So here's the analogy that I draw: is the plant's already built. In other words,
That's just bad management.
Here's
that's
the problem.
really what it
Well,
is.
but wait a minute. The SJRA and Lone Star Board, the old one, put themselves in this situation. So here's the analogy I draw. One time years ago when I was a teenager, I got on a Triumph motorcycle and I got up to 135 miles an hour.
Wow.
And that was great. And then I said, whoa, I better slow down. I'm running out of road. And as I started to slow down, it got a speed shake.
Oh, yeah.
Bad one. Scared me. I sped back up. I'm already in the problem.
You're committed.
I'm committed. What do you do? How do you get out of
That's it.
So the problem we have here is they got committed. Now the powers to be, they have one or two choices. Force some kind of set down and fix it, which I'm all for, or just keep driving until you can push this thing. And let me just tell you something.
Yeah, and they're past the point of no return.
They're
is what
past
it
the
is.
point of no
Yeah.
return. Here's the problem. I believe that if the bonds, they're scared the bonds will fail. And in fact, I believe SJRA is running around telling people they're going to fail. When I don't believe they have to, nor do I believe I believe all this can be solved.
Okay.
They're screaming doomsday because they want to hang on. They're going to look really bad. I read the bio of the director of the Texas Water Development Board while I was at TAG in Austin. And you know what one of his proudest accomplishments is? The number of bonds that he has floated successfully in his career.
Okay.
And he should be proud of that. I mean, they're doing development. This will be a failure. This would be a failure for him. So he has a stake in that. And I believe he also is screaming doomsday. And I believe they're getting to the governor of Texas. And that's a sad thing. I believe the governor of Texas has been told your credit rating is going to fail.
Right.
If you don't find a way to force this thing through. So on one side of it, you got a few people, political, who are worried about their reputations and all that stuff, and maybe a little money. But I don't believe a $400 million blip, and I suspect the state is sitting on 30, 40, $50 billion worth of bonds in different areas.
Oh, yeah.
And you mean
Easy.
to tell me $400 million is going to make that big of a difference? Even if they did fail, I don't believe they have to fail. We're under. Believe me, we are under siege by these people to try to force this situation. And I think it goes all the way up to the governor of Texas.
I think so,
I
too.
believe he's being pushed, and I don't think he knows this whole story.
Right. Because it's complicated.
I don't even believe the board of directors of the SJRA. That board's change. I don't believe they know this story.
Is that an elected board?
No, it's appointed by the governor of Texas.
Okay.
And you know what he's worried about? And this is just a God's honest truth. He said the last board member he appointed, and I think that board member is probably a great person. He appointed him because of the lake lowering controversy. We need to appoint some people who live close to the lake and are affected by the lake lowering that the SJRA does every year.
Right.
Really? Come on. So I think the SJRA board, the board that's there right now, has inherited something they don't even know they inherited and don't even know why they inherited it. So how are we going to get any?
And they're drowning. They
drowning.
really are.
Well, they don't even know it. They don't know it.
So, at first, they said we're running out of water.
Yeah.
Well, now that that's been disproven, now they're claiming subsidence.
Yes.
So let's talk about a little bit about what subsidence is,
Okay.
how it happens, and is it true and correct?
The way so there's natural subsidence always, a little bit. So anything.
The ground sinks when it gets wet.
Go out there and dump a wheelbarrow of dirt out on the ground, even with no rain. As it dries and as nature takes its course,
Compaction. Right.
you get compaction. So compaction is, for the most part, not all, but for the most part, the cause of subsidence. So all the clays and the sands start to squeeze together. And one of the things that can cause that is removing the groundwater, which supplies buoyancy or resistance to the overburden.
Okay.
All right?
That makes sense.
So subsidence can come from groundwater pumping. And in fact, we know down on the Gulf Coast, there was horrible subsidence. Some aquifers, some stratas are much more prone to compaction than others.
Okay.
So the thing we have in
And is that due to the recharge rates, or just several factors?
No, recharge rate for the most part isn't an issue. To be honest about it, the amount of water we're taking out of the aquifers, believe me, recharge rate isn't going to affect it. So if you got 180 million acre feet of water under the ground and you're taking 100,000 acre feet a year out, and you're spreading that across a very big area,
just nothing.
Look, I believe it does. So let me see if I can simplify this. We have 3 basic aquifers, 4 that we utilize.
Okay.
We utilize the Chico, which is the shallowest aquifer. Now, the way an aquifer works is they down dip.
Okay.
So they come up out of the ground up here in northern Montgomery County. We have what we call an outcrop.
Okay.
So the Chico, if you could take a knife and fillet it, you would flay upwards, and it would be like coming out of the skin up here in northern Montgomery County. Well, that's where the water goes in, the recharge.
Okay.
That can be stream beds, lakes, just running out on the ground, doesn't matter, recharges there. Then the Evangeline sets below the Chico. Now, they intermingle. So
Okay.
it's really, there's not a bright line difference between those two.
Right.
Both of them have clays that we know compact. I mean,
Okay.
There's been some studies on that. We know that happens. And we know also that down in Harris County, taking water out of the Chico and the Evangeline, which were the only two aquifers that were really available to them, because the others are so saline and they're deeper and all that.
Right.
It caused that. Up here in Montgomery County, though, we're less prone to that because the Jasper, which is the third major aquifer, is deeper, and there are no studies on compaction, but there is some evidence by a lot of hydrogeologists that say it's unlikely to compact at the level that the Evangeline and the Chico compact. It's a different.
Okay.
Now, the interesting thing is that it is separated from the other two aquifers by something we call the Burkeville overlay.
Okay.
And that's a really dense clay, and it's got water in it, so it's an aquifer, and
Sure.
it's pretty significant, but it keeps the Jasper and the Evangeline from intermingling.
Okay.
But all four of those aquifers come up out of the ground in the northern parts of the county. That's where the recharge comes in, and somehow or another, through hook and crook, and I can't find one shred of proof anywhere about it, they came up with the notion that we only recharged 64,000 acre feet a year. Now, I have seen a USGS study that says it could be between 1 inch and 6 inches, meaning 1 inch would be 64,000 acre feet. 6 inches is 360,000 acre feet. They were unwilling to come down.
It's a big variance.
Big variance. And it probably depends on a lot of, things that they didn't have the money to study to nail it down.
Sure.
But recharge isn't really at all the issue. Here's the issue, is that an aquifer is like a very dense filter,
Okay.
right? Water moves extremely slowly through the aquifer.
Right.
So when you put a well in and you start sucking water out of it, that water well, where you hit water, let's assume you just drill the well and you haven't taken a drop of water out of it. You go down 60 feet and all of a sudden you're in water.
Mm-hmm.
But what you know is if you stopped the well right there and started pumping, you'd run out of water pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So you take that well down 400 feet and you put that well at 400 feet. And what you know is the amount that you're going to pump requires 400 feet of filter to feed enough water into it so that it can stay underwater.
Okay.
Right? That water can't go into that well bore
Right.
at 60 feet fast enough. So what they do is they sink these wells, and they have well engineering. It's real simple science.
Right.
It tells them how deep to put these wells to assure that they can get a good water flow. And we permit by aquifer, so they know which aquifer they want to drill into. So what happens is you get what we call a pressure cone.
Okay.
So the water starts to come out of the aquifer, and you lose pressure. The aquifer's still 100% full. It just can't maintain the pressure, right? So if I took this bottle that was completely full of water, I took a bottle and I stuck a hole in it right here, what would happen? Water would start spraying out of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's called artesian pressure.
Right.
If I put a hole right here, what comes out of it? It might just weep out a little bit.
Right.
So as you suck water out of that hole, you reduce the artesian pressure.
Okay.
That allows the clays and the silts and the sands to compact because now they no longer have the pressure buoying them.
Right.
Some compact more than others, right? But in Montgomery County, our projected subsidence countywide over the next 70 years is about a half a foot.
In 70 years.
In 70 years, it's a half a foot.
And that's at the rate that we're pumping water
Right
out
now. And and let me tell you this, the SJRA and the Woodlands Water Authority did the study. They signed off on it that said we could pump over 100,000 acre feet a year with no problem when they were on the steps of the courthouse. Now all of a sudden it's a problem for subsidence. That was never mentioned before. And so what they did was they figured out if we beat the subsidence drum, scare the people in the Woodlands, scare the people in Porter, scare the people in Splendor and everybody else about subsidence, they'll be demanding that we cut back, that we cut the rest of the county back.
Right. And then we'll offer a solution, which
and
is
we'll
surface
offer
water.
a solution and step in. And we can build our infrastructure back, and we can pay for our water plant if we force this.
Wow.
And so Lone Star is not trying to force surface water and not trying to force groundwater. That's not what we're doing. Either way, we don't care where you get your water. You want to build a surface water plant? Go for it. Is there anything we can do to help you? We're happy to. But we are not going to force the rest of the county, who's going to get no benefit from that, to pay for it by forcing them to stop pumping groundwater. We're just not going to do it.
Okay.
And so that's what we're up. So we're up against the SJRA trying to do that, but we're also up against the Harris-Galveston Subsidence District. Let me tell you a little story about those guys.
Okay.
They have no limits on pumping. We have a limit. We have a 97,000 acre-feet limit.
And we're pumping out of the same aquifers.
We're pumping out of the same aquifers. Well, actually, we're pumping more out of the Jasper, but they're pumping out of the Evangeline, which comes up here, and they're probably pumping some out of the Jasper. I don't know how much.
Okay.
They're pumping over 200,000 acre-feet a year. And furthermore, most of the places that they can't furnish surface water to are up on the northern edges of the county.
Right.
Which they claim is not causing subsidence in Montgomery County, but on the other hand claim our wells in Montgomery County are causing subsidence in Harris County. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen a county line. I've never seen a county line that could stop water from moving across it, be either on top of the ground or under the ground.
Right.
I don't think that's true. So, in fact, Mr. Turco, who runs the Harris-Galveston Subsidence District, told his board in April that there are wells. His board asked, what are you going to do about the wells that are outside of Harris County that are affecting subsidence in Montgomery County? I mean, in Harris County.
In Harris County, yeah.
And he said, and I may be wrong about this, but I think he said Liberty, Chambers, Waller, and not the least Montgomery County have wells that I am going to seek legislative assistance to regulate. So now Harris-Galveston, they want to come up here and tell us what we can and cannot pump in Montgomery County.
Wow.
So I just want the citizens to recognize that there's a lot of mistruths and all stuff. We don't have a big PR budget. We don't have the PR campaign that SJRA has.
Right.
We just don't. And we also know that they are influential with a lot of the other groundwater districts because they Harris-Galveston, for example, hosts all the meetings. They're not even a voting member, and they're hosting all the meetings down there.
Right.
We want that changed. We would like to see that changed. But we want the citizens of Montgomery County to know that this groundwater district is looking out for their rights. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to do anything negative. We would love for the SJRA or the governor of Texas or somebody to say, hold it, everybody. This is a bad deal. Can we get 15 of the smartest people in this county together, the real stakeholders, and figure out a solution to this? Because I'm telling you, I've worked in corporate America my whole life, and I've seen way bigger problems than this solved much easier than what we're doing here.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And then just we need to define what the problems actually are. Also.
That's right.
So and not go on bad data.
That's exactly right.
So let me ask you this, and I'm only curious about this myself. If the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District are the ones that put out the GRP contracts, why can't y'all just get rid of them?
We didn't put them out. We forced them. We forced people to join them. They're not our contracts.
Okay, whose contracts are they?
SJRA
The
is one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, there's several. So some districts were smart enough to do their own. And so you'll see some differences in the amount of money that goes to the SJRA for different reasons.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
But the SJRA is the big one. They're the big gorilla.
Okay.
Most people just join theirs, and so
I would imagine there'd be an unenforceability clause in those contracts that's built in.
well.
So if any component becomes enforceable, it
I don't
makes the rest
know.
of it
I'm not a lawyer. Here's what I do know. I do know the contracts are enforceable until they're not.
Wow.
In other words,
That's some weird language. I'd love to read one of those contracts.
I don't know that I wouldn't say that's a language in it, but here's what I know. I don't believe the city of Conroe, the city of Magnolia, all these little independent water producers would be spending the kind of money that they've spent if there wasn't a way to get out of it without spending it. Now, one other thing people need to know. It is public information how much the SJRA, now this is taxpayer money, folks, has spent fighting this instead of solving it. And I can tell you the number is and I don't know that this is absolutely correct because there's a lot of costs that I believe are not in there.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual amount that they've paid lawyers and stuff like that is somewhere, I think, approaching $6 million.
Good Lord, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, you could live another 10 years on that.
And really, right, and this is really only the beginning.
It is.
When you look at because of the development, because of everything else that's going on in Montgomery County.
This is just in lawyers.
Right.
We spent nearly $2 million. As an old board, we spent $2 million of the taxpayers' money since we settled the litigation.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you something. This board that I sit on takes the taxpayers' money as seriously as they do their own. We have cut our rates 20% since we came in, our pumping. So that's how we have a tax.
Right.
We cut our taxes to the citizens 20%. At the same time, the SJRA has raised theirs twice.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
and they don't have enough to build this infrastructure they want to build.
They don't have
any.
Point. There's no way.
So
in fact, they've said publicly, and this is just without Lone Star curtailing groundwater pumping, we have no mechanism to continue the build out of the infrastructure. They've said that publicly.
Wow.
So, guess what their mission is? Guess what their mission? Their mission is find a way to make Lone Star cut back. Subsidence right now is that cudgel that they're using.
Right. And that's all based on false science.
Well,
or at least inaccurate science.
It's based on mostly no science. So one of the things this Lone Star board has done, in fact, we cut rates 20%, but we're spending a boatload of money studying the first ever subsidence. Now, here's SJRA screaming subsidence. Here's Harris Galveston screaming subsidence. Nobody has ever done a subsidence study on Montgomery County. We're doing it.
Okay.
We're in phase 3 right now. We've done the first 2 phases. We're going into phase 3. We're in phase 3 right now. And what we're trying to find out is this really an earth-shaking problem? Is it really? And if it is, look, we'll do what's necessary. In other words,
I would even support it.
Anybody would.
Absolutely.
I don't want to damage people's property and all this, but there's more to it than just subsidence. So is it causing a flooding problem? Mm-hmm. Well, go to the SJRA's website. They're responsible for flood control in the San Jacinto River Basin. Mm-hmm. And look at their 5 top reasons for flooding. Where do you think subsidence falls?
I bet you it's way up there at the top.
It's not on there.
It's not?
It's not even in the top 5. It's not even on their list of causes of flooding. And there's a reason for that. Because it isn't. It is in the coastal areas. When you get down to 10 feet above sea level.
Right.
And you drop 2 feet, tidal flooding gets to be a problem.
Absolutely.
But most of Montgomery County is over 100 feet above sea level. It just, like I said, you could have ground faults and stuff that could be caused by groundwater, where you get a low area, might cause some flooding, but it's not the major cause. The major cause of flooding, and for every homeowner listening to this, I'm going to show you the major cause and show you how you can prove it yourself.
Okay.
I want you to go out in your front yard, and as close to your house as you can, I want you to lay a water hose in the yard, and I want you to turn it on full blast. And I want you to walk down to the street and time how long it takes for that water to get to the street.
Mm-hmm.
That may be 15 minutes.
Yeah, it won't be long.
Maybe 20.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Then I want you to turn the water off, and I want you to go in front of your garage, if you got a garage fronting the house, and I want you to lay that water hose on the driveway right in front of your garage and turn it on full blast and see if you can beat the water to the street.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we've done. We
Right.
have paved the county. The water can't go into the ground anymore.
Right.
We have overdeveloped. We don't have enough retention. We don't have streams who can carry the water. So if flooding is your problem, quit letting them distract you on the subsidence issue and get to the real issue. And that is, how do we make up for the amount of ground that we've covered so that water runs really fast into these streams and then the streams cannot take it to the...
Right.
So you want to solve the flooding problem? Quit letting the SJRA and all these other people distract you with subsidence. Now, I'm not saying subsidence is the problem, but it's not the major flooding problem in this county. And they are doing, not only are we doing damage charging these people for all these GRP projects, but by not getting to the real cause of flooding, you really want to cause people problems?
Right.
There you are.
Yeah, that's not good.
So just go do that little test, and I can tell you that until the county starts having stricter requirements around retention and runoff and really takes this flooding issue seriously, stream beds and all this, and the SJRA does what they were originally chartered to do in 1938 in their original charter, flood control in the San Jacinto River Basin.
Yeah, that's about it. Well, you know, I'm a proponent of a flood control district for Montgomery County.
I am too.
Because I think we need the science. I think we need the ability to be able to cut large bios through here, because that's the only way it's ever going to get out.
If we're going to continue to pave ground, and we are,
right, and
then we're going
and
to.
I just don't think we'll ever have enough retainage. Not out here.
That's right. Well,
You know.
you just run out of space. That's
Right.
what you do. But for now, there are some temporary fixes. So building infrastructure, flood control infrastructure, is really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it needs to be done, but it needs to be phased over time. There are some
It'll have to be.
short-term things that can be done to help right now. So if the SJRA would take some of their money and go clean up some of this stuff and get rid of some of those berms,
Yeah, dethatch it all, and yeah, right.
even widen the 242 bridge, that's a dam. That 242 bridge is a dam.
Right.
Widen that. That's not that expensive. That's a $4 or $5 million, $10 million. I don't know what it is, but it's not $1 billion deal. So start looking at what we could do to prevent the flooding instead of screaming about subsidence. It's a minor.
Right.
It's way down the list priority wise, I think.
Well, you know, I also believe that money motivates people. And my concerns is that there's money being filtered in somewhere through this whole process. And we need to find it.
Well,
root it out.
I'll tell you where you can go see some of it if you want to.
Okay.
Have you toured the SJRA's offices?
I never have, no.
Go do yourself a favor. In all of you citizens, the taxpayers bought that.
Right.
It's your house. Go take a tour. Go
I think
take a
I might
tour of
do
that. And ask, when you're in there, ask them to show you their company cars. And here's another thing I wish somebody would study. I would love it if somebody would study the amount of dollars, go from the manager level up.
Mm-hmm.
What's the amount of dollars per manager in payroll of the SJRA versus other government agencies?
Yeah.
I
There
love
you
if
go.
somebody ought to just study that. Look at their expenses. Look at all that stuff. Because, look, they have no oversight.
Mm-hmm.
The governor is their oversight, and you
Yeah,
and
and
I both know.
Anytime you have an organization that without oversight, you're going to have problems.
So all of you citizens, go down there and tour that. I feel guilty at Lone Star because we're in a building that was built by the old board that's probably $1.5 million building.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to know what that SJRA building cost because it dwarfs ours, and it is gorgeous, and it sits on the dam overlooking the lake. It is. Oh,
I gotta check that out.
yeah.
Yeah, because I paid for part of that,
I did too.
you know, through
I
my
did too.
water bill
You
fees.
bet. You bet.
So, well, Jim, I appreciate you coming on. Jim's going to be one of our speakers at the public forum, and so you can ask him questions after he talks, and it's going to be a great deal. So we're going to make it through this. I've got a couple more interviews that I'm going to be doing with other individuals about this before the forum, and it unfolds. You know, it's really making me wonder. And what I don't want to do is end up paying $1,500 a month for water. And so I'm concerned about the way this thing's going to go. And we all need to be. We need to be educated voters and make sure that the right people end up on boards such as this. And so property rights is what you need to look for in those individuals. I'm Hank Vatt. This is Hank's Think Tank, and we'll see you at the next one.
All right.